0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, quattro all-wheel drive, and enough tech to keep you entertained for hours. And it could be yours for just under £50,000. Wait, hang on a minute. That's 10k more than a similarly spec'd BMW M4. So why does it cost so much? Well, there's a lot of little things, and one pretty big thing this Audi RS5 offers that no other sporty coupe can quite match. Shall we take a look? My name's Tom, and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Strangely enough, the power unit is actually an interesting one. You'd think it was just an S5 engine with an extra turbo on it, but it's actually fairly different. It's smaller at 2.9 litres of displacement, but also has a shorter stroke, allowing for more power at the top end. Then of course there's 2 turbos instead of 1. The outcome is 450 brake horsepower and 600 newton meters of torque. And that torque is nearly across the entire rev range. 0 to 60 is dealt with in just 3.6 seconds. Pretty impressive. But let's take grip out of the equation and do the 30 to 70 sprint. So, how did we do in the 30 to 70 sprint? Well, we managed a time of just 3.5 seconds. Very impressive for any car, but sadly it wasn't quite enough to knock the Stage 1 Seat Leon Cupra from first on our leaderboard. So the RS5 will have to do with just second place. Now, the inside really has to be seen in person to be appreciated. This has got to be one of the best interior layouts today. There's no touchscreen nonsense, but there's also plenty of tech. The virtual cockpit also has a unique design compared to the A5 and the A4. For me, having the rev counter in the middle is just the perfect layout. It just has all the info you need whilst looking stunning at the same time. The seats are of course made with Audi's finest leather, but they're also all highly adjustable and come with a surprisingly good massage system. The design of the HVAC system though is actually one of my favourite things in this interior. It balances form and function perfectly by housing the temperature in these beautifully knurled dials and displaying further information via these capacitive buttons. There's then the air blade. Open it and you can release high volumes of air whilst actually still maintaining a whisper quiet cabin. This car also has the extended ambient lighting package, turning the RS5 into a literal spaceship at night. There's then a large panoramic roof that's definitely a worthy option as it allows for more exhaust without the chilling wind. Finally, we get to the B&O sound system. Clear across the whole frequency range, it really puts other systems to shame. The rear seats are just about spacious enough for shorter journeys. Legroom is fine, but the lack of headroom means you have to slouch down in the seats quite a bit. There is, however, a few amenities back here. You get your own climate control, cup holders either side of the seat, and an armrest. Moving to the boot, you'll find 465 litres of very usable space. That's a fair amount larger than the M4 or the C63. You can even fold the seats down, so getting a 60-inch TV in is absolutely no problem. Right, tour over, let's see if this Audi can put a smile on my face. So what is a 4-year-old Audi RS5 like to drive? Well, I'm happy to report it still feels just as solid as when it was new. The steering in comfort mode is so light, and that means out of the 3 big German coupes, it's definitely the easiest to drive on a daily basis. Suspension is firm, but it's also very compliant when you're going over speed bumps. And one of the good things about Audis is you never seem to scrape when you're going over bumps. The drivability of this car is fantastic as well. There's no jerkiness when you're moving off from a standstill. This car actually has the ZF 8-speed gearbox, and it's not as fast as a dual clutch, but as you'll see on the B-roads later, it is still fast enough. We're going to start off doing some driving around town, move on to the motorway to talk about some features, and then we're going to do some B-road driving to see how this RS5 handles some British B-roads. In terms of parking then, this RS5 comes with a reverse camera and parking sensors. And because this is actually quite a small car, it's fairly easy to park. This is a really tight space. And even then, because I've got a lot of steering lock, I can almost get in one go. And the lack of jerkiness from the gearbox means manoeuvring this car at low speeds is so much easier than something like a BMW M4. Coming out of junctions just in comfort mode is where you realise how luxurious this car feels to drive. Because of the twin turbo setup, you have a smaller turbo that just gives you so much low down torque, even at 1000 RPM. And it just means the car does exactly what you ask it to do. Okay, let's reset the trip computer. I'm going to see what MPG we get on the motorway, because it is important to see how many times you have to fill this car up. Obviously, the less times you visit a petrol station, the better, really. Before we get on the motorway, let's have a quick taste of what this RS5 is like in the handling department. I put the car into dynamic mode. That will shift down gears. I've then put it in manual so I can control the gears myself. Steering is heavier, exhaust valves are open, and the throttle response is sharper. As you can see, it's typical Audi. It just hooks up and goes straight away. Can actually get this car sideways, but you have to put a lot of effort into it. You basically have to go into a corner way too fast, slam on the brakes to get the rear to come round, and then plant your foot with the traction completely off. Can't really do that on public roads though. For now, we're going to go back into comfort and see what MPG we get on the motorway. So what about refinement? Well, I'm happy to say this is where the Audi does really well. You know, Audi have always been pretty good at making their cars really quiet and refined to sit in, but their latest cars are absolutely impeccable. They're so at home on the motorway. Road noise is kept to an absolute minimum, even though we're riding on absolutely massive wheels, and wind noise is just pretty much non-existent. This is actually one of the most aerodynamic coupes on sale. I think it's got a drag coefficient of something like 0.32, not entirely sure what that means, but it basically means it's just really slippery. That combined with acoustic glass and lots of sound deadening mean this is a really quiet car to travel in. The suspension then really settles down on the motorway, and it just means travelling long distances doesn't take any energy out of you. If anything, you actually feel more refreshed when you get out of the car. As you guys probably know, as standard you don't really get any kit on any Audi, but for some reason they decided to give you a blind spot monitor in the RS5. Not entirely sure why, but hey ho, there you go. I am thankful for it though, because although you do have pretty good visibility out the side because there's no B-pillar, and you've got curved bits of glass on the wing mirror, it just means you don't have to turn your head at all when you're changing lanes. And that just further adds a little bit of luxury onto the car. In terms of interior quality, this is quite a weird area for Audi. So they don't use as much leather as their competitors like BMW or Mercedes, but visually the quality seems quite continuous through the cabin. It's quite hard to describe, you kind of have to experience it in person, but you get soft touch materials on the door cards and the dash, and they may not be leather, but they still look and feel really high quality. In terms of rattles and squeaks, most Audis are pretty good. This particular car is also rattle and squeak free. Although one thing I have noticed is when you put stuff in the door cards, because they're not lined with felt or flock, it means the stuff rattles around. You might have been able to hear it when we were driving around town earlier. And something like that shouldn't really be happening in a car this expensive. Then visually on the inside, I think this is actually one of the nicest looking and one of the most functional cabins on the market. Because you've got that airblade feature, it just adds something that's quite interesting and quirky in the cabin. You've then got your HVAC controls, which, as I mentioned in the intro, just look really nice, and everything has this really satisfying click to it. Sadly, you don't really get that in a BMW, which kind of justifies a bit of the price to me. It just feels like a more luxurious place to be overall. Then in terms of seat comfort, these are definitely one of the most comfy seats I've sat in. You can adjust the pitch of the base, you then get a little bit that extends to give you further leg support, and then you can actually adjust the bolsters of the seat. So I can tighten the bolsters if I want to, or slacken them off when I'm on, you know, the motorway like I am now. And then you have lumbar support, and then for some reason they give you a massage function. Not complaining though, and it is actually pretty good. It's less of a gimmick than I thought it was going to be. So we know this car's comfortable, quiet, and I have to say, I think that's actually the biggest thing that justifies the price tag for me. Remember, you're going to be spending most of your time on roads just like this, so being able to switch it from a hair-raising fast car to something that would just be like a normal Audi A5 is actually pretty important. It just means you're not having to make a compromise on comfort for a sporty vehicle. Then in terms of specs, there's 3 things that I think you should absolutely get in this car. First one is the ambient lighting package. As standard, you just get normal ambient lighting, which I think is in the footwell, and then you get some in the door cards. And it looks okay, and you have a couple of colours to choose from. But the extended one adds an LED strip just here, and then lighting in the cup holders, and then even more lighting down by your seat. And it looks like an absolute spaceship at night, and it makes the car feel really special to sit in. There's then the Bang & Olufsen sound system, and to describe it, I just have to say it is the best sound system you will get in a coupe. As usual with B&O sound systems, the bass is so clear, and it has this unique, really hard thud when you turn it all the way up. Of course, when you do turn it all the way up, the sound stays crystal clear as well. That's one thing a lot of other speaker systems don't do. They tend to get quite mushy when you turn them up to full volume. Then the last thing is this panoramic sunroof. Because you can tilt it, it means you get a bit more exhaust noise into the cabin. And that would be one of my few complaints about this car, is that the stock exhaust just isn't loud enough for a sports car. When you compare this to something like a C63 or an M4 competition, you wouldn't even be able to hear it if they all did a drive-by at the same time. Coming off the motorway then, and I can't believe it, we actually managed 42 miles to the gallon. And I know we've been moving in slow-moving traffic, so this is kind of like best-case scenario. But for a 450 horsepower, all-wheel drive sports car, that's absolutely insane. That means you could do like nearly 600 miles on one tank of fuel if you wanted to. But I'm sure what we're going to do next is going to absolutely ruin that fuel economy figure. Let's see how this Audi RS5 handles some B-roads then. Going to go back into dynamic, put the gearbox into manual, and I'm going to open the sunroof just a little bit so I can get some more sound. Get some nice burbles. Sounds really nice actually. This is the pre-OPF RS5, and it makes a massive difference, as you can hear on those gear changes. Nice raunchy noise. You do sometimes get some bangs as well. That's where this RS5 is really good though, is coming around those tight corners. It just powers you out of them so fast. Even in first gear, it's not that jerky actually. Lovely noises. Steering, even in dynamic, is still pretty light, to be honest. suspension is perfect though for British B roads. Tighter roads like this, you can really open the car up and you've got total confidence because you know exactly what the car's going to do. There's one thing that all Audi RS cars do, is they just have this really nice way of tucking into a corner. They almost seem to lean into it somehow. It's got a really positive steering feel when you put your foot down. And the brakes are very sharp as well, so no worries about rear-ending anyone. Well, this is where the RS5 does so well. You can go over big humps in the road and it just complies with them so well. So what's my verdict on the Audi RS5 then? Well, of course, it's an Audi, so it's not going to be as exciting as a BMW M4 or C63 in the handling department. But it's got a nice noise to it. It's actually louder than I thought it was going to be. I've seen some of these in person, and they weren't as loud as I had hoped. And I think that's purely because they were 18 plate onwards cars, so they had the OPF filter. But this has a really nice rasp to the exhaust system. But anyway, in conclusion, I'd say if you do a lot of miles per year and you're looking for something that puts a smile on your face on a B road and never scares you, I mean, it can scare you, of course, if you don't know what you're doing, but it's not unpredictable. It's a very safe car to travel in. I would look at buying one of these, and you know, it will actually be more efficient than you expect it to be as well. Even after all that driving and draggy runs, we still managed over 26 miles per gallon. And for a car with 450 horsepower, that is mighty impressive. The only thing I'd say you should do to this car is get a stage 1 map and maybe get an exhaust as well. Then it will be a really exciting car to drive. The extra bit of power will help the rear just push out a little bit more around the corners. And it should make it just as fun as something like a BMW M4. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, and why not subscribe to our channel? Not only can you see more videos like this one, you'll also be able to see all the stock we have for sale. Anyway, my name's Tom, and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.